System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. I am Amin TMK. Today is Monday, October 21st. I am here with Amosha Lil Tanky Sumler. Amosha, what is good, my friend? How are you?
Man, golden. You know what I'm saying? On Monday in America, what's not more inspiring?
Everyone loves Mondays. That's something that everyone knows about America.
About
yeah.
Increasing the GDP, you know what I'm saying? Being a good citizen, man.
Going above and beyond at your job. That's what we need. So let's get into this. I want to talk about the death of Yahya Sinwar, who was the leader of Hamas, and he was killed in a military operation, Israeli military operation. And there was obviously a lot of outcrying and sort of pouring of love and respect, not just for Palestinians and not just for people who are supporting the movement, but sort of the way in which he fought to the very end. And I wanted to mention this specifically because this is, what's the guy, Squidward from the press briefings. He basically, he got up there and he basically blamed Sinwar for October 7th. He blamed not blamed him for October 7th. He blamed this entire war basically on, October 7th. And
I guess that means it should be over now then, huh? Because he's dead. I mean, if it was all Sinwar, there's really no reason for the Israelis to continue on.
Yeah, I want to read this too, and I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to definitely give it to you, right back to you. So he said he didn't launch this conflict, but for the past year has refused the efforts of the United States and our partners to end it, refused to return the hostages and have been separated for their families for more than a year. We also just had Kamala Harris come out and repeat the same debunked information about rapes and all this other stuff. She also reiterated that Hamas does not want a deal. We already saw that Hamas basically said, we will take Joe Biden's deal. And, we've already talked about the Israelis not wanting peace, but this just seems, Nasrallah being, killed. It was like, I don't even know, 2 weeks ago, a week ago. I mean, time is so crazy. I just wanted you to react to the statement and what were your thoughts?
I think that these things dispirit, resistance movements, and maybe they do, right? Maybe they got the right model and they've figured it out, and this will be the thing that breaks the spirit of a people. But historically, that's just not the way it's been. He's come to represent a sort of masculinity that only exists in the revolutionary mind state, right? I've seen so many comparisons between this person, like to the way that Rasputin represents the Russians. Apparently they fired a tank shell at this dude. Sniper took a shot, wounded him. And then finally he's killed by a drone. His last act, he's like throwing a stick at the drone. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like Khan in Star Trek, you know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, it's whatever, but right? You didn't see him sniveling, no crying, please don't kill me, none of that, right? And so it creates this image of a certain type of revolutionary, a Malcolm X, defiant until the end, a Che Guevara, and these type of things historically have cauterized a movement in such a way that they become heroes, they become ideals. This is more even than like when you think about the Nasrallah assassination. I mean, he's in a bunker. They had to blow up a city block to get to this man. And also, Nasrallah is not widely seen as a military man. He's seen as a spiritual man, spiritual leader. But now Sinwar. I mean, this is a guy for all of the billions of dollars in surveillance that the Americans, the British, the Israelis certainly have been doing, probably also the French, everybody's looking for this guy. Mossad's looking for this guy. Probably Egypt's looking for this guy. No one can find this guy. When they got the guy, it wasn't because of some brilliant intel op that happened. Homie was out on the front line firing on a tank, throwing grenades at IDF soldiers. Like, releasing the video is probably the dumbest thing that Israel has done this year. Like, I mean, man, time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah. Again, I wanted to get your thoughts too, just on this like whole conversation surrounding the negotiations for peace. And again, Israel is the one who killed the peace negotiator. You're right about Nasrallah, much more of a religious leader. And, it seems now like Israel is really entrenched and we are going to kill the people at the top. We're coming for everybody. We're opening up these aspects of war that you're really not supposed to do, which, you're killing civilians to get
we were there
to,
with the pagers, I mean,
right. And that was just 3 weeks ago. I mean, it's really crazy how many red lines. Yeah, they just crossed in so many red lines. And everyone is, I think, in a lot of ways just saying like, F it. Like if it's on like this, I mean, yeah, it's like not a part of the rules engagement. We talk about war crimes, but I mean, is anybody close to the amount of war crimes that Israel is committing right now?
Nature abhors a vacuum, right? So when you're showing that again and again, it's okay to go for a leader of a movement, a spiritual leader, a military leader, right? These kind of things become they fill the imaginations of the resistance, right? Up to and including, it's now pretty widely accepted that the Northern Resistance sent a package to Netanyahu. He wasn't there to sign for it, but the package was dropped off, buddy. You know what I'm saying?
Because it's like Pool House.
Like this, and these are the things, right? Like when the West says all of this is okay, the people fighting the West, then they just adopted into think about back to at the beginning of the special military operation with the Russians, right? They weren't using cluster bombs. Like, man, the world really we have them, but we shouldn't use them. They're bad. America runs out of shells. So what do? They give the Ukrainians cluster bombs and the Russians like,
guess it's on now.
I guess we should use it, right?
I guess it's on.
And this is what continues to happen, right?
This is escalation, right?
In acts of desperation, allow these operations to take place, which go against what their normal stated values are. I mean, up until the Obama era, the American government kind of admitted that they tortured, but they definitely pulled the line on assassinations. We stopped doing that. We learned in the 70s it didn't work. We don't assassinate, right? Now to the point where as the Israelis like, yeah, we low-key been doing this all along, And so, like, it's out there now, right? And this does change the calculation of everybody that is fighting you. Because they used to say, man, hey, look, if it's F me, it's F you. And that's just the bottom line. Like, if you trying to get me and you telling me everything goes, why do you think that a military or a militant-minded person wouldn't, if they have the capability, exercise the exact same responses? And that's what we're seeing now. But again, what's the difference, right? When you see photos of Netanyahu, two things come to my mind. Reading the paper, shaking. You talk all that tough, we the master chosen race, we going to crush the people of Amalek. And your hands are strong. But then you get smacked in the mouth, and now all of a sudden your hands are shaking when you reading these proclamations of what you're gonna do to me. You know what I'm saying? The other thought that comes to my mind is, when the attack was on, you see him running through the halls of some bunker trying to get strapped in. Oh my God! Don't let it pop off before I find my safe room.
That little suit got person in a suit jog with dress shoes. That little shuffle.
Never mind when they originally assumed that the attack was going to come. Netanyahu was in his bunker for like 2 days, right? So this is a whole different type of masculinity that's being provided, right? The Western masculine presents his masculinity by sending others to die for him, right? And the global South looks at that and they're like, nah, y'all is actually cowards. And that's why I thought it was so amazing, right? That's what the West jumped on, oh, Sinwar must be a coward. Look at how he died. Like, and what it reminds me of, you brought up Squidward when he was going over dude's background. He's
How
talking
was
about
his name? Matthew Miller? Is that it?
Matthew Miller, yeah. He tortured Palestinians. First off, this man is a victim of torture. That's undenied. This man was given a 400-year sentence in the Israeli internment system, and we all know what that's about. Who on God's earth knows what this man endured for 20 years he was in there? He served 20 years of a 400-year sentence. He only came out as a prisoner swap. I think he's one of people, the Israelis got, one of their dudes caught up in Gaza, swapped him out, and Yanwar was one of the dudes. You know what I'm saying? And so when they're talking about what he did to Palestinians, these are people that he knew were collaborators. Like, what did you expect him to do? I go back to, like, what did Mao Zedong do to collaborators? Like, when you have a revolutionary moment and you know that the enemy's strength is infiltration, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let you sit in on the meetings. Like, so again, all of those things that Matthew's saying about him is like, these are standard practices in revolutionary movements. You know what I'm saying? Resistance movements. But again, I get from the American perspective the threat that he represented, why they would present him as such, but they don't understand that the way that they're presenting him, even though that's the way they see him, when you describe the ways, when you demonstrate and show them, like, people are not going to draw those same conclusions that y'all drew, and you just got to make space for that. I think this was the mistake of the year for the Israelis as far as their propaganda goes. But again, to them, a leader is not a person who's out in the front. That's a sucker. You know what I'm saying? And I think it shows the difference between, at the very least, the Israeli mind state and the mind state of those that they're at war with.
And like you said, this should begin, right, to see the beginning of the ceasefire and the end to... You
said he was a target. You got him. It's like when the Americans admitted that they had killed... Osama bin Laden. Well, then why did the Afghanistan war carry on for like another 6 to 10 years, man? Like, you got him. Go home.
Yeah, so...
We'll see if Israel goes home. I'm sure they'll go straight home.
But they didn't. Sure. No, they did not. Oh. They did not, no. And that's on, basically today, they hit another hospital. And 72 people were killed. This is an Indonesian hospital. And it's in North Gaza. This is people who are trying to shelter anywhere they can find. At least 87. Sorry, I misspoke. And a lot of people kind of been getting on us for reporting the low numbers. I mean, we do want to acknowledge that we were talking about 200,000 dead with the conversation with Ralph Nader and his predictions. And, we're just doing the best that we can. You can believe what you want.
It's different data out there, and you do your own research. All the information we give you is research, but you got to understand, even in science, people don't say the same thing. And how someone died in Gaza right now is always going to be an extremely controversial statement. If a person dies because they had the flu, that death is because they didn't have access to healthcare, because all of these hospitals were killed. I'm sorry, that counts as a casualty of war. If someone starves to death because you've blown up all of the places where a person might get food, this person might have been an accountant, they might have been a baker. Like, not everyone is a militant, right? But to the Israeli mind state, every
innocent life, they always say that,
is a disease, right? If you've been exposed to it, you're infected with it. And that's really where their AI is right now, with the whole, what is your circle of connection to this person that we thought was dangerous? That's your best friend? Haha, you're dangerous too. Bro, I'm a baker. You know what I'm saying? So,
That was
And
Obama dropping drones at people's weddings.
Right. Exactly. Right. I'm his chauffeur. I don't got nothing to do, So like, again, that's just the Israeli mind state, and that's where they're at. They've already begun movements. The Likudniks are already talking about colonizing northern Gaza, right? All of these are just blatant war crimes. With the ICC and the ICJ both having decisions hanging over Israel's head right now that they know will never be implemented. So Israel just continues to do what they want.
Yeah, and it's again, it's making the world an incredibly dangerous place. I mean, we're seeing an enormous war in Russia and Ukraine, and it still seems, for the most part, that, like, again, if you look at the journalists killed, if you look at children killed, the numbers are not even close. And it is, I mean, you're killing religious leaders. I mean, you're killing, people who are, like, again, you hear everybody who was involved in the Palestinian situation use the word martyr. It's like just a word that people use, and people are ready for this. And I think it's a little bit different than the Western mind state when, obviously I think everyone wants to live as long as possible. And of course, most people do. But I think that there are people out there that are willing to die for something. And that's always inspiring. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that, like you said. I wanted to pivot to this because tomorrow, do you know what tomorrow is?
Tell me.
It's a special day. It is the BRICS Summit, baby.
Oh, yes.
Guess where it is? Do you know where it is? I know you do.
It's in Russia.
Moscow, Russia. You're totally right. Putin's going to be hosting that.
Lula called in sick. Something happened to him. Some type of domestic dispute. His neck is supposed to be cut. It's actually kind of unusual circumstances, but he'll be attending via teleconference.
Okay. Yeah. What do you are you reading the tea leaves on that one? Do you have any? Do you think it could be anything?
It feels weird to me, right? With everything on the line, with us being this close to World War III, with essentially it looking to be the BRICS economic alliance versus the Western rules-based order. And that's so interesting because some of these nations realize they're being dragged against their will, right? Like I think about the whole thing that's happening with India now, right? Although India has tried everything they can to really align with the West has never shown any real proclivity to want them in a real way. I mean, look, there's the Quad alliance that's really just meant to strangle the Chinese ability to navigate through the Malacca Straits. But other than that, right, they've always been, so now you've got this whole thing where Canada is trying to impose sanctions on India and say that, you guys are running ops in our country. And think about the irony, right, when we talk about what the Western mind state is, because this bears repeating. The population of Canada is like 30 million, 32 million. The population of New Delhi, the city, is 25 million. I mean, Canada is barely a suburb, right? It's barely a suburb into the world's most populous state. Imagine talking about increasing military rhetoric, towards and this is just the disrespect that the West has, right? And so even though India's never really wanted to be part of the bad boys club with BRICS, they're being forced to do it, right? They wanted them to blow up their, metaphorically speaking, economy, to choose to not buy the Russian oil, when the Europeans chose not to. And they're like, nah, we're not going to do that. In fact, they bought excess Russian oil and started selling it to the Europeans since they didn't have sanctions on themselves, right? I think Brazil is kind of the same way. Like they wanted to be in a nice little economic, safety blanket, in case they should come under a sanctions regime. Lula has his own reasons to not really trust the West, but he didn't want to be part of the bad boy club. You notice because when Brazil had an opportunity to invite someone to join BRICS, they invited Argentina, which blew up spectacularly in their face with Milei, this crazy man. Right? When you would have thought that naturally a leftist would have been reaching out to Venezuela, but he didn't want that kind of smoke. Didn't want to be seen as that kind of a socialist, right? And now it's all falling back on them. All of the tactics that they used on Venezuela, now they're using on Brazil. And it's hard for me not to see like this is kind of some kind of a way to be like, I'm there, but I'm not there, right? When it's not going to be enough for the West at all. I don't think that the West is about half measures. You have to disavow and distance yourself from the people that the West sees as enemies, or they will destroy you. And I think that I just feel like this Lula is it's an odd time to not stand with the people that you're the B in BRICS, you know. So there we go.
There's a lot of conversation, like you said, sort of about the economic aspect of it, but also BRICS is sort of being forced in a little bit of ways to be a military alliance, and Iran, China, Russia, these countries have a huge reason to be maybe not allies, but at least aligned in some way with each other. Do you think
what they like to call strategic partnerships? Now, with China and Russia, it's a step further. It's a partnership with no limits, is what they call it. You gotta love the way the Chinese speak, man. You gotta love it. But it's not the way that an American would think about like NATO, where like it's a mutual defense pact and an attack on one is an attack on all. They have really tried to keep as much distance as possible to not be entangled or entrapped into an affair that could be disastrous. I mean, and again, it just kind of goes to show the caution, right, that the non-Western world is taking as it moves towards these things. But it's hard to not see military implications, as you said. Iran allegedly trades military equipment with the Russians. The Russians allegedly trade military hardware with the Indians. I'm sorry, the Indians, of course, the Iranians as well, right? And so, like, you have all of that going on. And so, all of the oil from, not all of Iran's oil, but Iran is the largest producer of oil that China consumes. Russia's a close second, right? So you can see how, once again, within this organization, they're trying to be self-sufficient in a way, whereas sanctions can no longer be a crippling tool against them. And that's supposed to be the major point of this BRICS conference is taking further steps towards de-dollarization. This is an economic move, but it's hard to not see the potential for military-minded type interference. A lot of the people that America hates is there. I don't know, man. I got a sneaky and sinister mind, man. It's like The Godfather 3. Like, all of a sudden, dude can't make the meeting of the Dons. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just weird to me. It's just weird. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe he really is just healing. We'll see, though. If something goes wrong, right, especially in the era of, like, again, what do we started the episode talking about all of the leaders that have been meeting untimely deaths, right? So it just has me extra paranoid, right? As far as like,
you think military action could happen at the summit?
It's always possible. It's a greater than 0% chance that the West sees this as a way to, it could even be Iran, right? So not Iran, it could be Israel. We told them we would do something at the most in our platoon. You just never know with the Israelis. And the West has shown literally zero ability to want to rein them in. Though you could make an argument. There was supposedly leaked attack plans. Still don't really know what to make of that. I can't really see a reason why Americans would do that.
What is they're not a part of the BRICS economic, movement or club, but they are part of the bad boy club, and that's North Korea. What do you, are they also?
They've applied to be in BRICS, though.
Yeah. Where do you think they are in terms of?
I don't see that happening just yet. It's
but militarily then, with those BRICS countries that are on sort of the military alliance on the low, or the would you say the
one that they have the closest alignment with is the Russians, right? I think this is again because Americans tend to be racist and not really well educated, right? When I think about the North Korean government, I don't want to say regime because that's that's weighted language. It's historically been closer to the Soviets, right, and the Russians than the Chinese. But Americans think, oh, it's got to be the Chinese that have empowered the North Koreans, right? But mostly it's been the Soviets and the demise of the Soviet Union, mostly the Russians. And so they train, they do military exercises. I think the much over ballyhooed, oh my God, the North Koreans are storming Ukraine. I think that's ridiculous. Like, how would you feasibly have a combat unit of North Koreans out there with Russians? You think that the average Russian soldier speaks North Korean? You think the average North Korean speaks Russian? Like, there would be no way to communicate. And if you can't communicate, you can't be on a battle space together.
So you don't think even if a larger conflict were to break out, that North Korea and Russia and possibly China would be militarily involved?
That's different, right? They have the freedom and the ability to do as needed. Look, historically, we know for a fact when the Americans pushed past the 58th parallel in North Korea and invaded, 1 million Chinese came over the border and they had Russian air support, right? So in the event of existential demise, all bets are off. Right. But I really feel like most of these things are at the very least, they're commercial. Right. Russia will trade the North Koreans technology as they need or weapons, and vice versa. China has done a great job of not really selling military technology really to anybody. That's not what they do. They're building up their military for themselves. When you see them building aircraft carriers, it ain't to sell to Russia. It's to increase the size of the People's Liberation Army, So those kind of arguments with China has always been ridiculous. And dual use is ridiculous because everything is dual use. Like, I can send you a microchip because I want to, give you a phone or something like that. And you can also repurpose that microchip into a military device like that, So like things like that, that's still overrated. The thing is, China is not making missiles, okay, for like Russia. And probably, Iran, they're not making them for Iran. Russia's not making missiles for Iran. Iran makes their own missiles. Now, they might export those missiles to Russia or maybe drones, Like you could see a little bit of cui bono, some ad hoc, you give us an intermediate strike missiles, we'll give you air defense, right? But that's still not quite the same thing as like NATO and Article 5, where like, oh my God, England got attacked, Hungary's coming to the defense, Italy, America, Canada. It's not that formal, right? The closest it's that kind of formal to is probably, you can argue, Russia and North Korea or Russia and China. And even then, they mostly just do operations together, like training, and you can't read that much into it. Like everybody does military training with each other, like that happens a lot.
It's a scrimmage, kind of.
Yeah. I mean,
got to scrimmage with another team. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I want to ask you about this. This is our last thing. I think we're going to try to do like a little fun thing at the end because the world is so ridiculous and the unreality is just off the charts. And I don't know if y'all saw this, but I came across, my social media feed. And then I was like, should I send this to you? And then you just saw it on your own. So I was like, all right. So there was this, I guess, student made but funded by the Harris campaign commercial. And there's been this whole agenda or not, for black men. Like that's what they've been trying to get black men out there to vote. So there's this commercial, and the commercial is like a dating show. And, all the beautiful women are there and they're talking to the guy and they're asking him questions. And they're like, how tall are you? And he's like, I'm 6'5". And they're like, how much do you make? Or what do you do? And he's like, I work in finance, making $100,000. And then they're like, oh, what are you doing this November? You know, are you going to vote this November? And he was like, oh, it's not my thing. And they was all disgusted. And they were like popping their balloons to say, no, we're not going to be dating you because you're not voting for Kamala.
Man, you got to.
This is the type of outreach that's reaching. Is this reaching you now?
Absolutely.
Do you now feel like you want to vote for Kamala?
1,000%. As a person that's not 6'5" and is not often making six figures a year, you know, I think that right, you got to love the casual eugenics, right, of the Democratic Party where they are now, right? I mean, please understand, if you're saying the only thing that makes a man worthy of being a potential partner to someone is being over 6'5", right? You guys are supposed to be the actors, incredibly ableist. Can you? I mean, you're talking about
it's so short-sighted. Yeah,
that's 6'5", right? Makes a six-figure salary working in finance, right? Like, because everybody has those jobs. Everybody. That's how Americans are doing, man. Everybody got
$100,000 job. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's better than having a $40,000 job at the Giant or Kava or whatever awful service job there are. But it's really not doing that much. And what was interesting to me
and the commercial is at six figure. It just said six figure. So it could be anywhere from 100,000 to 999,999.
I guess you're right. It could be on my $9 billionaire.
It's still, however, a salary point that less than 10% of Americans make. Even though in a place like DC, you need at least that to, make rent, But again, man.
All they do is insult people. Yeah. Like, why do you think you're going to win people by insulting them or shaming them or guilting them?
It has very limited value, very limited. But all of them got, taped somewhere, and Epstein died and they went somewhere else. And so they know how effective shame has been as a motivator for them their whole political career. God forbid that video drop. God, don't you want to vote for this? Don't you think you should vote for this? We looked at, we were going over the tapes of the pros and the cons.
It was like Usher. He's like, he didn't want to do the endorsement quite yet. And they were like, well, what if?
You did it now, huh?
And then now, he went back up there and he did it.
This is his confession.
It's again, it just goes to show you that politics is gangster. It's about blackmail. It's about what we have on you.
Politics without power. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. What's up? We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. All those go, iHeartRadio, wherever you find us. We're also right here on YouTube. Like and subscribe. You know what it is. Tell your friends, tell your cousins, tell your racist uncle, whatever it is. Let us be the one that breaks the news to them. I want to give a shout out to our patrons. We have a Patreon. It's in the description. I won't go over it too much here, but we got much love here. We got Dumpy, Tom LeBeau, Turned Leftist, Dubsy22, Nicole Hedges, JGoLart94, No Ground, RK, Paula, Alyssa, Lauren, Suzette, and Dennis. Much love to y'all. Anything I missed, Tanky, any thoughts before we out?
Monday.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' in the city life.